Hey guys, tonight we're heading to one of the coldest, most unforgiving parts of the Eastern Front during World War II, the Kalinin Front. You can almost feel the icy wind biting at your face as you march through the thick snow, every step making your boots heavier and heavier with each passing hour. The sky above is a dull gray and the air is sharp, freezing every breath you take. The world around you is a never-ending sea of white, where everything looks the same, where the land and the sky blur together, and you feel like you're walking on the edge of reality itself. There's something about this place that makes it seem like the cold is alive, moving through you, inside you, draining all energy and warmth. The German soldiers who are posted here, preparing to defend the Kalinin area, aren't just facing the enemy. They're up against the vast, unforgiving winter. The temperatures are far below freezing, and with the relentless wind, it feels like your skin is being cut by the cold itself. You're far away from any comfort. No roaring fires or warm meals, just the endless snow, the biting wind, and the ever-present threat of death, not only from enemy fire, but from the freezing temperatures that could claim your life without a single shot being fired. The Germans have been here for months, entrenched deep in the snow, trying to hold their ground. The cold seems to freeze everything around them. Every movement, every breath, every thought. The snow is constantly falling, covering everything with a thick blanket, making it harder and harder to see or hear anything. Every step feels like you're sinking deeper into the cold earth, your body fighting against the elements that want to freeze you in place. As you march toward your post, you can't help but wonder whether you'll survive this. The Germans have been told to hold the line here no matter the cost, no matter how many men they lose. The Soviets are pushing forward inch by inch, but the conditions are just as brutal for them as they are for you. The only question is who will break first, the men of the Wehrmacht or the cold itself? Every soldier has heard the rumors. The Soviets, just like you, are struggling against the cold, the endless snow and the bitter winds. But there's a difference between them and you. The German soldiers are more accustomed to fighting in these harsh conditions. They've been here for months, surviving in the frozen wilderness, waiting for the inevitable attack. You've been trained to withstand the cold, but that doesn't make it easier. Now you're posted on the Kalinin front, preparing for an assault that could happen at any moment. You've set up camp in a machine gun nest, buried beneath the snow, hoping the enemy doesn't notice. But it's impossible to escape the chill that seeps through every layer of your clothing. You're freezing, your body already starting to go numb. You find yourself wondering how long it will take before you can't feel your fingers anymore, or before your legs start to freeze in place. It's not just the enemy's bullets that you're worried about. It's the cold that has the power to destroy you without a single shot being fired. And what's worse is that the longer you stay out here, the more it feels like your body is starting to shut down. It's like the cold has a way of creeping inside you, freezing your soul just as much as your body. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to share where you're tuning in from and your local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Germans, the Wehrmacht, are marching forward, their boots crunching through the snow in unison. You can hear the faint hum of their voices, muffled by the howling wind. The cold has begun to numb you, your senses dulled by the freezing air. But the soldiers around you are just as resolute, just as determined. Their faces are blank, worn by exhaustion and the constant onslaught of the elements. But in their eyes there's something else, a fire. The will to break through, to push forward, even when it feels like the world is fighting against them. The Soviets are out there somewhere. You can feel their presence even if you can't see them. The land is wide open, the snow stretching out as far as the eye can see, but you know the enemy is hidden somewhere in the folds of this icy landscape. They've been waiting for this moment, just like you, and now it's their turn to strike. But the Germans, your comrades, are undeterred. They've come to fight, to win, and nothing will stop them. Not even the frozen wasteland that has become their battleground. The march forward is slow, deliberate. Each step feels like a small victory, but there's a growing tension in the air. The cold gnaws at your bones. And despite the determination of the men around you, there's a quiet understanding that this fight won't be won by strength alone. The terrain itself seems to be an adversary, and the cold is its weapon. Every step feels like it takes more effort, as if the earth itself is pushing back. The snow continues to fall, heavier now, as though nature itself is conspiring to slow you down, to weaken you. And yet the Germans march on. They press forward with the knowledge that the Soviets are somewhere ahead, waiting for their chance to strike. There's no turning back now. The war has already begun, and this is where it will unfold. The cold, the snow, the endless wait, it's all part of the war. The enemy may be waiting, but you're here to make sure they know you're coming. And then, as if on cue, a distant rumble cuts through the air, the sound of artillery fire. It's faint at first, but it sends a chill down your spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that the battle has truly begun. The Germans are advancing, yes, but the Soviets are ready to fight back. The rumble of their artillery is only a reminder of the brutality of what's ahead. There's no rest here. No time to catch your breath. The war will not pause, and neither will you. You can feel the weight of it now, the enormity of the battle ahead. This isn't just about breaking through the Soviet lines. It's about survival. The cold will be your greatest enemy, and the Soviets will be relentless in their efforts to drive you back. There's no room for weakness, no room for hesitation. The snow around you is nothing but a vast white ocean, and in the middle of it you stand alone. There is only one direction now, forward. The silence of the snow is broken by the sound of movement ahead. You can see figures in the distance marching forward with purpose, just like you. The Soviets are out there, but you can't afford to focus on them just yet. The cold, the exhaustion, the waiting. It all feels like a fog that clouds your thoughts, but you push it aside. There's no time to think. The fight will come soon enough. The German forces are advancing, each soldier fighting against the cold, against the exhaustion. There is a quiet confidence in their movements, a knowing that they are part of something bigger, part of the will to break through the Soviet lines. But beneath that confidence there's something else, a subtle unease. You can feel it in the air. It's not just the Soviets you're up against. It's the weather, the unforgiving landscape. The battle won't be just about bullets and bloodshed. It will be about endurance, about surviving the cold, the terrain, and the pressure of the fight. The Wehrmacht continues to march, but you're aware of the danger closing in. It's not just the Soviets you have to worry about. The cold will be just as dangerous. You wonder how long the men around you can hold up. You wonder how much longer your own body can take it. The cold, the snow, and the weight of this battle are beginning to take their toll, and yet you continue forward, because you have no choice. The fight isn't just about defeating the enemy, it's about surviving, pushing through when every instinct tells you to stop. You push on step by step, knowing that the worst is yet to come. But there's no other option. The Soviets are waiting. The machine gun nest lies ahead, buried in the snow, waiting to be uncovered. And you will face it, just like every soldier before you. There's no turning back now. You've come too far. The battle is coming, and all you can do is hold your ground, press forward, and survive. The biting cold is a constant companion, and every step you take through the deep, unyielding snow feels like a test of endurance. You can barely feel your feet anymore, the numbness creeping up from your toes to your ankles. The snow doesn't let up. It's relentless, just like the war. You try to focus on your surroundings, but everything looks the same. Endless white with the occasional dark figure of a comrade trudging along beside you. You can hear their heavy breaths and the crunch of boots in the snow, but even those sounds feel muffled, swallowed by the vastness of the frozen landscape. Your fingers are stiff inside your gloves, the chill of the metal rifle resting against your side, numbing your body even further. You wonder how anyone can keep going, let alone fight in these conditions. Every soldier around you is moving with the same grim determination, their faces pale from the cold, their eyes fixed ahead. But no one dares speak. What is there to say? The cold has already done its work on them, numbing not just their bodies but their thoughts too. You push the thought away and keep walking. There's no time to stop. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. The snow is thicker now, each step making your legs feel like they're being weighed down by cement. It's a struggle just to move, to keep up with the others, but you can't afford to fall behind. The Germans are pushing forward, determined to break the Soviet lines, and you're part of that push. But the cold is starting to feel like a force of its own. It's everywhere, seeping into every crack, every part of you, until it feels like you're becoming a part of it, a part of the frozen wasteland around you. You don't know how long you've been marching. Time has become irrelevant out here, swallowed up by the snowstorm. The cold has slowed everything, your movements, your thoughts. You wonder how anyone can survive this. How long can you keep going before the frost takes you too? Every man around you is struggling, but no one speaks of it. No one acknowledges the inevitable. They're too proud to admit that the cold is their true enemy, the one they can't defeat. You push forward anyway because that's what soldiers do. You're here for a reason. The war is happening all around you, and the Germans need to push through. The Soviet defenses lie ahead, and this stretch of frozen wilderness is just the beginning. But it's not the Soviets that are on your mind. It's the cold. The constant biting cold that's eating away at you from the inside out. You can feel it in your bones, every muscle tight with the strain of trying to keep warm. Every breath you take burns in your chest, but it doesn't matter. You can't stop. The fight is out there, and you have a duty to carry out. The further you go, the more you feel the weight of the world pressing down on you. The battlefield isn't just the land you walk on. It's a living, breathing entity, and the cold is its weapon. It's more dangerous than any enemy soldier, more insidious than any gunfire. The cold doesn't care about your will to fight, your resolve. It takes what it wants, and it doesn't stop. The soldiers around you are starting to show signs of wear, their movements sluggish, their faces flushed and pale from the effects of frostbite. You've heard the stories, of course. The men who were found frozen in place, their bodies stiff and rigid, eyes wide open in shock. You wonder if that will be your fate. You wonder if the cold will claim you before the enemy has a chance to do so. But you push those thoughts away. You can't afford them. The cold is already in your mind. It's already working its way into your thoughts, making everything seem heavier, more difficult. As you continue your march, you glance at the men around you. Their eyes are vacant, distant, as if they've already been here too long. They don't speak, don't make any noise except for the occasional groan or cough. They're broken down by the elements, but they keep going. They don't have a choice. None of you do. You know the drill. You've been trained for this. The battle isn't just against the Soviets. It's against the environment, against nature itself. But every soldier has limits, and you're beginning to wonder how much longer you can hold out. The cold is merciless. The snow keeps falling thick and heavy, and it feels like the very air around you is working against you. But there's no time for doubt. The mission is clear. The Germans must advance. You must push forward. And yet, with every step, the weight of the snow, the pressure of the cold begins to feel heavier. You know the machine gun nest is ahead, buried beneath layers of snow and ice. Is part of the plan. You've been briefed. The enemy is coming and you'll be there, ready to fight. But for now, there's nothing to do but keep moving. Keep marching, keep fighting against the cold. There's no turning back now. You're here, and you'll do what you're trained to do. The Soviets are out there, and the machine gun nest awaits. It's only a matter of time before the battle begins. You just have to make it through the cold, and that's the hardest battle of all. The stillness is heavy, almost suffocating. For all the marching, for all the noise of boots crunching through snow and the low murmurs of soldiers trying to keep pace, the world around you feels eerily quiet. It's the kind of silence that presses in on you from all sides, making your thoughts feel more distant, harder to reach. The wind howls, but even its scream seems muffled, trapped beneath the thick layer of snow that blankets the land. It's like the earth itself is holding its breath, waiting for something, anything to shatter this fragile moment of calm. You can't shake the feeling that something's out there, just beyond the curtain of snow and wind. You don't know what it is, but you can feel it, like a shadow lurking in the periphery of your vision. The stillness gnaws at you in a way that's more unsettling than any sound. It's the silence that makes your skin prickle with unease. The tension builds slowly, the kind that grows with every passing minute of waiting. Your hand tightens around your rifle. You can't help it. The silence feels like a trap. And you know the enemy is waiting too. This is the hardest part of war, the waiting. It's worse than any battle. The calm before the storm. You don't know what the Soviets are doing, where they are or when they'll strike. You're just out here in this God-forsaken place, lost in the white abyss. The longer you wait, the harder it is to keep your focus. You try not to think about the cold, but it's always there, digging into your skin, freezing the air in your lungs. You can feel it creeping into your bones, numbing you in a way that makes every second feel like a battle for survival. The men around you are no better. They're fighting their own internal battles, the cold, the fatigue, the gnawing hunger that started to creep in. The shivering soldiers huddle together for warmth, but it's useless. Nothing can keep the cold at bay. Not the layers of clothing, not the tattered blankets that once held promise of comfort. Here in this frozen hellscape, even the most basic comforts of survival become luxury. You begin to wonder if any of you will make it through this. But for now, there's nothing to do but wait. And then in the distance, a crack. The unmistakable sound of gunfire. The Soviets have opened fire. Your body tenses. The sudden jolt of adrenaline coursing through your veins. The stillness is broken, replaced with the crackling roar of bullets slamming into the snow, and the sharp, horrifying sound of men crying out as they fall. Your heart pounds in your chest, but the instinct to stay low, stay hidden, takes over. The fight has begun. The moment you've been waiting for has arrived. You raise your rifle, steadying yourself, waiting for the right moment to return fire. Every fiber of your being is tuned to the sound of the gunfire, to the rhythm of the battle that's unfolding just beyond your position. The cold doesn't matter now. You've been in this place too long to be afraid of it anymore. What matters now is surviving the firestorm that's about to rain down on you. The Soviets are out there, hidden in the snow, their positions difficult to see through the blizzard. You can hear their voices, distant but clear, shouting orders, moving through the storm. It's a reminder that no matter how cold it is, no matter how much you wish for some kind of relief, there's always an enemy on the other side of the battlefield. They won't stop coming. They never do. You pull the trigger, sending rounds down range, but the visibility is poor. The snow is falling too thick and fast, obscuring everything. Your aim feels off, but you fire again, hoping that each bullet finds its target. You don't know if they're getting close, if the Soviets are advancing, or if they're just waiting like you for the right moment to strike. The waiting game continues, but now it's different. The air crackles with tension. The cold is still there, but it's secondary to the adrenaline, the pure instinct to survive that floods your senses. Your ears ring from the fire, from the chaos of battle, but for some reason, there's a part of you that feels detached, almost like you're floating above it all. You can hear the shouts of your comrades as they return fire, the crackle of distant gunshots, but it's all a blur. The only thing that matters now is staying alive, keeping your head down and firing when you can. The battle continues around you. You can't see much of it, but you can feel it, the heavy weight of every shot, the cold wind that bites deeper with each passing minute. The gunfire grows louder, and you know they're getting closer. You know the Soviets are pressing in, determined to take this position from you. But you're not going to let them. You're going to hold your ground, no matter the cost. You will survive this. You must. In the chaos of the battle, you feel a shift, a momentary lull as the enemy pauses, regrouping, preparing for the next wave. You don't have time to think about it. You reload your rifle, steadying your breath. The calm before the storm has returned. For a brief moment, you catch a glimpse of the world around you, a snowy, windswept hellscape filled with death and destruction. But it's all you know now. It's where you are, and it's where you'll stay. The Soviets aren't backing down. They're coming for you, and you'll be ready. You have to be. The cold is unforgiving, as if it has a mind of its own, relentlessly wearing you down. It's a bitter companion, creeping into every joint, numbing every inch of exposed skin. Your fingers are stiff around the rifle, your legs burning from the constant strain of moving through thick snow that seems to swallow every step. Yet you continue because the only choice is to keep going. The sounds of battle have faded for the moment, replaced by the harsh wind and the low hum of the snowstorm. But you know it's only a matter of time before it picks up again, before the Soviets make their next move. The machine gun nest is still nearby, buried beneath layers of snow, waiting for the right moment. You're aware of its presence, almost as much as you're aware of the enemy advancing. The nest has been quiet, but it's a looming threat. You're supposed to hold it. You have no choice. There's no room for failure here, not when everything is at stake. The Soviets are already closing in, and every second that passes feels like a lifetime. You can feel the weight of it, the responsibility of holding your ground against an enemy that seems endless. The snow has become your battleground, and every step you take, every breath you draw, feels like it's against the elements themselves. Your comrades, once steadfast and determined, now look like shadows against the backdrop of the storm. They are just as tired as you are, their faces pale with the effects of frostbite, their movements slower, more sluggish. But there's no room for weakness here. You push the thought of the cold away, ignore the numbness creeping into your extremities, and focus on the task at hand, the enemy. You know they are out there, moving closer with each passing minute, and you need to be ready. In the distance, you hear the low rumble of artillery, distant but growing. The Soviet artillery has been pounding the area for hours, shaping the landscape into a twisted mirror of war. Every explosion in the distance sends a jolt through your body, the earth itself trembling with each shell that hits. You don't know where the artillery will land, but you know it's only a matter of time before it's closer. Every sound, every tremor in the ground sends a wave of tension through you. The cold is bad enough, but the explosions make the air feel like it's alive, like the whole world is shaking under the pressure of the battle. Your mind flickers back to the machine gun nest. You know that you have to hold it. You're aware that it's your position to defend. But with the Soviets pressing in and the artillery hammering everything in sight, you wonder how long you can last. You glance around at your fellow soldiers. They are preparing just like you. Their faces are determined, their eyes grim with the knowledge that this fight is about survival, not glory. There is no honor in this frozen hell, only the desperate will to stay alive for just one more moment, and then it happens. The first burst of gunfire cuts through the stillness of the storm. The Soviets are here! The sound of rifle shots fills the air, piercing the wind like a cruel reminder that no one is safe. You hear the crack of bullets overhead, the whizzing sound as they fly through the snow. You crouch low, your body instinctively moving to the cover of a snowbank as the first shots land too close for comfort. You can feel the pressure in your chest, the adrenaline surging through your veins. This is what you've been waiting for, what you knew was coming. The battle begins in full force. Your comrades open fire, returning the enemy's barrage with quick, steady shots. The machine gun nest is finally activated, its gunner pulling the trigger with a cold, mechanical precision that you've come to recognize as part of this fight. The sound of the MG-42 roaring to life fills the air, drowning out everything else as the gun begins to tear through the snow, cutting down anything in its path. You can hear the shouts of the Soviets now, their voices rising in a mix of fear and anger, a primal reaction to the sudden onslaught. But they keep coming, advancing through the snow like shadows in the storm. You rise from your crouch, your rifle steady in your hands, and take aim. The cold wind makes it hard to focus, but you manage to steady your breath and pull the trigger. Your shot is true, and you watch as a Soviet soldier crumples to the snow. It's a small victory, but one that doesn't last long. The Soviets are relentless, pressing forward despite the losses. You fire again, the recoil pushing you back. But it's nothing compared to the force of the enemy's advance. The snow is a blur of white and red as the battle intensifies. The air is filled with the sounds of gunfire, the scream of the wind, and the muffled thuds of artillery shells falling in the distance. You can't keep track of it all. The movement, the gunfire, the shouts and cries of men in the midst of battle. You just keep firing, each round a small act of survival. Your hands are numb, but you don't let that stop you. You don't have time to think about the cold, about the pain. All that matters is keeping the enemy at bay, keeping your position, keeping your life. And then, through the chaos, you hear it, the unmistakable roar of Soviet tanks. The sound of the engines rumbling in the distance, cutting through the snowstorm, signals that the enemy is pushing forward with even greater force. You don't know how many there are, but you know they're coming. The snow isn't enough to stop them. The cold isn't enough to freeze them in place. The battle has escalated, and it's no longer just about survival in the snow. It's about holding your ground as the enemy throws everything they have at you. You glance over at your comrades. They are all engaged in the same struggle, firing, reloading, and taking cover. There's no time for panic. There's no time to think about anything but the fight in front of you. The Soviet tanks are getting closer, their engines a constant hum in the air. You know the machine gun nest is still firing, but you also know that it won't be enough. The Soviets are too many, their firepower too overwhelming, but you continue to fight to hold your position. It's all you can do. The battlefield has erupted into chaos, The snow that had once seemed so silent now swirls with the violent winds of war. Kicked up by the boots of soldiers, the rush of vehicles, and the relentless barrage of gunfire. The Soviet tanks are closer now, the rumble of their engines unmistakable as they push forward through the thick snow. The heavy metallic roar cuts through the sound of the wind and the gunfire, adding a deeper, more ominous layer to the growing cacophony of war. You hear the distant growl of their treads as they crush the snow beneath them, the sound making your pulse race as you realize that the next wave of attack is upon you. You can feel the ground shaking beneath your boots as they approach. The battle is no longer confined to just the infantry. The tanks have entered the fray, and now the stakes are higher. The battlefield around you has become a living thing, thrashing and shifting with every explosion, every burst of gunfire. You know your machine gun nest won't hold for long, not against the sheer power of the tanks. The thought flickers in your mind, how long before they push through, before they crush everything in their path? Your rifle feels heavier now, the weight of it no longer reassuring but burdensome. It's not enough. You know it. The Soviets have tanks, artillery, and the advantage of numbers, but you've been trained to survive, to fight back no matter the odds. The cold, the fear, the enemy. None of it matters when you're in the heat of battle. Survival is the only thing that keeps you going, the only thing that keeps your finger on the trigger. Your comrades are in the same situation, firing, ducking, and reloading in rapid succession. They're not talking much now. There's no need for words. You can see the grim determination in their eyes, each man fighting with everything he has, knowing that the cold, the enemy, and the odds are stacked against them. But still they press on. The roar of the MG-42 fills the air, a steady rhythm of death as it spews out bullets into the advancing Soviet troops. But you know deep down that the line is about to break. The tanks are too powerful, too many, and the infantry pushing forward behind them are relentless. The first Soviet tank emerges from the snowstorm, its silhouette barely visible through the swirling storm, but its presence undeniable. The ground shakes as it rumbles forward, and you instinctively crouch lower behind cover, knowing that a single hit from that beast could end everything. You try to steady your breathing, your heart hammering in your chest, but it's hard. It's hard to focus on anything other than the approaching tank, the sound of its engine growing louder with every second. The Soviet soldiers are closing in too, and the reality of the situation hits you. There is no retreat. There is no fallback position. The snow is deep, and the cold is unforgiving. Your only choice is to fight, to hold your ground as long as you can. The machine gun nest is your last line of defense, but it won't be enough against this kind of assault. You take a deep breath, steady your rifle, and squeeze the trigger again. The gunfire erupts in short bursts, each one a reminder that you're still in the fight. You can hear the sound of the bullets piercing the snow, but you don't know if they're hitting anything. It's hard to tell in the chaos. The smoke, the snow, and the constant barrage of fire obscure your vision. The only thing you can rely on is the rhythm of the gun, the way it kicks back against your shoulder, the way it commands your attention. Then, the world shakes. An explosion nearby sends a shockwave through the air, knocking you off balance. You stumble, your legs giving way beneath you for a split second, and you have to catch yourself. The tank's cannon has fired, and it's closer now. The ground beneath you seems to vibrate with every shot, and the sharp, thunderous crack of its cannon leaves your ears ringing. You hear the screams of men around you, but the sound feels distant, as if it's happening in a dream. The reality of it is too overwhelming. You don't know how much longer you can last. The tank is still coming, its heavy treads cutting through the snow like a hot knife through butter. The machine gun nest is still firing, But you know it won't be long before the tank's firepower overwhelms everything around it. The Soviets are pushing forward, relentless in their assault, and you can feel the pressure building. You glance at your comrades again, but there's no time to speak. No time for anything but survival. You take aim again, the rifle steady in your hands, your body moving almost automatically. The battle has turned into a blur. Shots, explosions, and the constant roar of the tank's engines. The snow around you is stained with blood, the once pristine whiteness marred by the violence of the fight. But there's no time to stop, no time to reflect. All you can do is keep firing, keep fighting, keep pushing forward until you have nothing left. The Soviets are getting closer. You can see the shadows of soldiers moving in and out of the snowstorm, their rifles raised, ready to engage. You can hear their shouts, their commands, but they seem so distant, like they're coming from a world apart from your own. Everything around you feels unreal, like the noise and chaos are happening to someone else, not you. But you know it's real. You know the tank is still coming, and you know the fight isn't over. You tighten your grip on the rifle, steadying your aim once more. You can see the Soviet soldiers now, charging toward you with fierce determination. You know that this is the last stand. The tanks are too close, the enemy too many. There's no escaping this. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the one you knew was coming but couldn't prepare for. And all you can do is fight, one shot at a time. The battle rages on, the sounds of gunfire and explosions drowning out everything else. You feel the weight of it all, the cold, the pressure, the fear, and yet you keep going. The Soviets are pressing hard now, their tanks rumbling closer, their infantry charging forward with the intensity of a storm. You can't afford to think about the odds, the overwhelming numbers. The cold has already numbed your body, and the exhaustion is beginning to take its toll on your mind. But you can't stop, not now. The MG-42 continues to roar beside you, its rapid-fire bursts echoing through the snow, filling the air with a deadly rhythm. The recoil slams into your shoulder with each shot, but you don't even flinch. You've fired this weapon enough times to know its rhythm, to know when to reload and when to hold the trigger down. The sound of its fire is deafening, but it's a lifeline, a connection to your survival. Each round that flies out of the barrel is one more that might make the difference between life and death. But you can feel it now. The tension, the pressure, the realization that you can't hold out forever. The enemy is closing in, and the weight of the tank's presence is undeniable. You've seen tanks before, but you've never fought against one like this. The sheer force of their presence is enough to make the ground tremble beneath your feet. They're moving faster now, their treads cutting through the snow like a hot knife through butter, their cannons raised, ready to unleash destruction. The snow around you is no longer pristine. It's stained with blood, with the remnants of men who fought and fell. The cries of the wounded fill the air, but there's no time to comfort them. No time to stop and think about what's happening. The battle has become a blur of motion and noise, the chaos of war sweeping over everything. Your rifle is shaking in your hands now, the weight of it growing heavier with each passing moment. Your fingers are numb, the cold making it difficult to maintain a steady grip. But you can't stop. You can't show weakness. You have to keep firing, keep fighting. The first tank appears in front of you, its massive shape cutting through the snow like a dark shadow. You can see its turret swivel, the barrel pointing in your direction, and for a moment time seems to freeze. You know this is it. This is the moment you've been waiting for. The battle isn't just about survival anymore. It's about holding the line, about proving that you can withstand whatever is thrown your way. The tank fires. The explosion shakes the very ground beneath you, and the world seems to shift. The shock wave slams into your chest, knocking you off your feet for a brief moment. But you scramble back to your position, knowing that this is far from over. You don't have time to think. You just have to keep firing. The MG42 continues to roar in your hands, its rapid-fire bursts cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. You take aim at the advancing Soviet soldiers, your aim steady despite the shaking in your arms. The recoil is nothing compared to the roar of the tank, the thud of its cannon fire that seems to rattle your very soul. You fire again and again, your shots finding their marks, but it feels like you're fighting an unstoppable force. The tank's presence looms over you, its massive silhouette dominating the battlefield. And you know that there's nothing you can do to stop it. The snow is falling harder now, the wind picking up, making it even harder to see. The battlefield is a blur of white and smoke, but you can still hear the voices of your comrades, their shouts of determination cutting through the chaos. You know they're fighting just as hard as you are, but the Soviets are relentless, their numbers growing with every passing minute. You glance at the tank again. It's getting closer. The rumble of its engine fills the air, and you feel the ground shake with every turn of its treads. The fear starts to creep in again, but you push it away. There's no room for fear. You've fought through this before. You've fought in worse conditions. You'll fight through this one too. But deep down you know that the tank is a game changer. It's a weapon of destruction that you can't match. You know that if it gets too close, if it manages to break through, the battle will be lost. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Still, you press on. The Soviet soldiers are closing in, their infantry charging forward with the same relentless determination. You hear their shouts, the sound of their boots crunching in the snow and the crack of their rifles as they open fire. The snow is stained with the blood of the fallen, and you can hear the cries of the wounded, but you don't stop. You can't. The MG42 continues to fire, its sound becoming almost a part of the landscape, a steady rhythm amidst the chaos. But the tank is getting closer, its massive presence a constant reminder of the odds stacked against you. The world seems to close in around you as you reload, steady your aim and fire again. But deep down you know it's only a matter of time before the tank breaks through, before the Soviets overwhelm your position. And yet, despite the odds, despite the overwhelming fear, you keep fighting. You keep pushing forward, knowing that this is your duty, that this is your moment. You don't know if you'll survive, but you fight anyway, because that's what soldiers do. You fight for survival. You fight for the men beside you. And above all, you fight because there is no other choice. The sound of the Soviet tank's treads crunching through the snow grows louder. The battlefield is becoming a symphony of chaos, each sound layered over another. Explosions, the deafening roar of the MG42, the crackle of rifle fire, and now the steady rumble of the tank. It feels like the earth itself is trembling beneath you. You try to ignore the rising panic in your chest as you steady your aim, the weight of your rifle suddenly feeling heavier in your hands. The Soviets are advancing. You can see their dark shapes moving through the snowstorm, charging toward your position with terrifying speed. You feel the pulse of adrenaline surge through your body, your heartbeat thudding in your ears. You've been fighting for so long, but the sheer ferocity of the Soviet push is unlike anything you've faced. The machine gun nest, once a symbol of strength, now feels fragile in the face of the oncoming onslaught. You squeeze the trigger, and another burst of fire rips through the air. The recoil slams into your shoulder, but you hardly feel it. The cold has numbed everything but the fight. The snow around you is stained red now, the battlefield a vicious, brutal reminder of what's at stake. The MG42's roar fills the air, cutting through the sound of the wind and the artillery. You can see Soviet soldiers falling, but there are always more. Always more. The tanks are close now. You know they're only moments away from breaking through, and your position feels more and more vulnerable with every second that passes. You glance back at the men around you, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The weight of the situation presses down on everyone. There's no room for doubt now. The enemy is here and there's no turning back. The ground shakes again as the first Soviet tank comes into view, its massive turret swiveling in your direction. You have no illusions about what it can do. The tank is unstoppable, a force of nature that will crush everything in its path. Your only hope is to hold your position for as long as possible, to slow them down just enough to give your comrades time to regroup, to find a way to counter this new threat. You take aim once more, your breath coming in sharp gasps as you steady your rifle. You squeeze the trigger, sending another burst of fire toward the advancing infantry. The snow is a blur of movement, the air filled with the sharp sounds of battle. The machine gun nest continues to fire, its relentless rhythm a desperate attempt to slow the Soviet advance. But deep down you know it's not enough. The tanks are coming, and the infantry is right behind them. You hear the unmistakable roar of the Soviet tanks' cannons, and you can feel the shockwave in your chest as their first shots land nearby. The ground trembles again, and the snow around you erupts in violent bursts of dirt and ice. You don't have time to duck. You don't have time to think. You just fire. You fire because that's the only thing you can do right now. The machine gun continues to churn, but it's becoming clear that it's a losing battle. The tanks are too powerful, their guns too deadly. You watch as the first Soviet tank fires again, the blast sending a spray of snow and dirt into the air. The impact is so close that you can feel the pressure of it in your chest. You try to steady yourself, try to fight through the terror, but the reality is sinking in. The tanks are here, the Soviets are here, and the fight is only just beginning. The snow is now thick with smoke and debris, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder and death. You feel the panic rising in your chest as the world around you becomes a blur of chaos. But you don't stop. You can't. The men around you are still fighting, still pushing forward, and you can't let them down. You can't let yourself down. Through the haze of battle, you see movement ahead. More Soviet soldiers, more tanks, more fire. The Soviet forces are closing in on you, and you know that this could be the end. But you don't stop. You reload quickly, your hands shaking, and you brace yourself for the next wave. The MG-42 roars to life again. The rapid-fire bursts echoing through the storm. The snow around you is no longer white, for it's stained with blood. The bodies of fallen comrades and enemies alike scattered in every direction. You fire again, the recoil of the MG-42 slamming into your shoulder, but you don't feel it. You can't feel anything but the drive to survive, to keep fighting for just a little longer. The battle is slipping away from you, but you won't give up. Another explosion rocks the ground, and you feel yourself being thrown to the side by the blast. For a moment, everything goes black. You're disoriented, your body aching, but you push yourself up, wiping the snow from your face. The battle rages on around you, but there's no time to process it. The Soviets are still coming, and you're still here. The tanks are close now. You can see their massive forms rolling toward your position, their cannons aimed directly at you. You can feel the heat from their barrels, the threat of death hanging in the air like a fog. Your hands are shaking, your heart pounding in your chest, but you raise your rifle once more. You steady your breath and squeeze the trigger. You fire, even though you know it won't be enough. You fire because that's all you can do. And then you hear it, the unmistakable sound of reinforcements, the roar of German tanks coming to your aid. It's a small flicker of hope in the chaos, a signal that the fight isn't over yet. But the Soviets are not backing down. They continue to press forward, their numbers overwhelming. The battle is far from won, but in this moment you know that you have to hold the line. You have to fight until the very end. The roar of the Soviet tanks shakes the ground once more, sending another wave of panic through your body. The snow continues to fall, thick and heavy, masking your surroundings with its relentless white veil. But beneath that, the sound of war rages on. The crash of artillery, the endless hum of tank engines, the deafening bursts of gunfire, all merge into a single cacophony that fills your mind, your senses, your very soul. You are no longer a single soldier in a war. You are part of something far larger, a single note in a symphony of destruction. You try to steady your hands as the MG-42 continues its rhythmic song of death. It's hard to focus. The cold has settled deep into your bones, and the exhaustion is becoming unbearable. But there's no choice now. No time for weakness. The Soviets are getting closer, their tanks rumbling as they carve their way through the snow, the very earth shaking beneath their might. You can hear the creak of their tracks, the growl of their engines as they push through the battlefield. Every turn, every rumble from the tank sends a pulse of dread into your chest. The first tank barrels into view, its massive silhouette cutting through the storm like a beast from the underworld. It's enormous, its turrets swiveling with mechanical precision, its guns aimed directly at your position. You know this moment is inevitable. There's no way to outrun a tank, no way to escape its grasp. You've heard stories, of course, but hearing them is one thing. Seeing them is something entirely different. The tank is a moving fortress, its steel armor an impenetrable wall. You feel small, fragile in comparison. Your rifle feels almost useless now. Even the MG-42, which has been your constant companion, seems inadequate against this towering metal monster. But still you don't falter. You keep firing, each burst of bullets seemingly swallowed by the massive beast that keeps coming. There's no time for doubt, no time for hesitation. The Soviet tank fires, and the sound of the shell's explosion rips through the air, sending debris flying. You instinctively duck, pressing your body deeper into the snowbank for cover. But there's no real shelter from a tank's fury. The first explosion is followed by another. And another. Each impact shakes the ground, and you feel the tremor in your chest as though it's coming from your very heart. The battle is intensifying, the Soviets pushing forward with everything they have. The tanks are relentless, firing in rapid succession, forcing you and your comrades into a desperate retreat. You don't have time to react. You just have to keep moving, keep fighting, and hope for reinforcements. But the reinforcements are nowhere to be seen. You know you're alone out here, cut off from any help. The sound of tank treads grows louder, the rumble vibrating through the snow beneath your feet. You can see more Soviet soldiers now moving forward in waves, their rifles raised, their faces hidden behind the snowstorm. They're advancing on all fronts, and your position is quickly becoming untenable. You try to steady yourself, but the fear is impossible to push aside. The tanks are too close now. The MG-42 continues to roar, but its fire feels hollow, as if it's nothing but a token effort against the tide of Soviet power. You're still firing, still trying to hold your ground, but there's a feeling in the pit of your stomach that tells you it's all for nothing. The tank is too close, its cannon pointed right at you, and you know that your time is running out. And then, just as the Soviet tank lurches forward, its barrel ready to fire, you hear the unmistakable sound of German reinforcements, the roar of a distant engine, the rumble of more tanks. It's a momentary flicker of hope in the midst of the chaos, but you can't afford to be distracted. You squeeze the trigger again. The guns recoil, sending a jolt through your body as you fire at the approaching Soviet infantry. But you can't stop the tanks. You can't stop the overwhelming force that's pushing forward, determined to break your line. The explosion from the Soviet tank's shell rocks the ground, sending a shockwave through the air. You can feel the heat from the blast. The snow around you kicked up in a cloud of debris. The battlefield is now a war zone of smoke and fire, the sounds of battle deafening. You dive for cover, narrowly avoiding another barrage, but you can hear the screams of your comrades, their voices swallowed by the storm of gunfire and explosions. The Soviets are coming, and they are relentless. You don't know how much longer you can hold out. You've been fighting for hours, and the fatigue is starting to set in. The cold has numbed your body, the fear has numbed your mind, and now it's just about survival. You reload your rifle, steadying yourself as best you can, and take another shot at the advancing enemy. The Soviets keep coming, more infantry, more tanks, more fire. The snow around you is stained with blood, and the air smells of gunpowder and death. The battle has become a blur, but one thing is clear. The Soviets are not stopping. They are pushing forward, and they will not stop until they've broken through. You can feel it in your bones, the inevitability of it. This fight will end one way or another, but you don't know how it will end for you. All you can do is keep fighting, keep pushing forward, and hope that reinforcements will arrive in time. The cold is still here, the snow still falls, and the battle rages on. But for now, there's nothing else you can do but survive. The sounds of battle are a constant now, an overwhelming crescendo of chaos. Your ears are ringing from the constant barrage of gunfire and explosions, the metallic shriek of the Soviet tanks as they trundle forward, their treads shaking the earth beneath you. The snow around you is a patchwork of bloodstains and wreckage, the white blanket of the battlefield, now marred by the ravages of war. Every breath you take feels like you're breathing in shards of ice, each step through the snow heavier than the last, your body pushing forward purely on instinct. The Soviet tanks have come too close now. You can feel their presence in your bones, the rumble of their engines vibrating through the very ground beneath you. The tanks are relentless, moving forward unstoppable, and you know that once they breach your position, it'll be over. Your comrades are still fighting, still firing back, but the oncoming force is too much. The enemy is overwhelming. Every inch of the battlefield feels like a battleground between life and death. It's no longer just about fighting. It's about surviving, about holding on until the very end. You fire again, each burst of the MG-42 a desperate attempt to hold your ground. You can see the Soviet soldiers advancing, their rifles raised, their faces hidden behind the snowstorm. The air is thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and blood, the stench of death slowly creeping through the battlefield. Your hands are shaking, numb from the cold, but you continue to fire, each shot a reminder of your resolve. You can't stop. Not now. The Soviet tanks are almost on top of you now. You can see the barrel of one tank swivel in your direction, the massive gun aimed directly at your position. You know what's coming. The sound of the tank's cannon firing is deafening, and you can feel the shockwave as the shell rips through the air, landing too close for comfort. The ground shakes again, and you instinctively duck for cover. The snow explodes around you, and the blast sends you sprawling into the frozen earth. The force of the explosion knocks the wind out of you, and for a moment everything goes black. You struggle to regain your bearings, your vision blurry, your body aching from the impact. But there's no time to waste. The battle rages on, and you're not dead yet. You scramble to your feet, your hands trembling as you reach for your rifle. The Soviet tanks are still advancing, and there's no time to waste. You don't know if reinforcements will make it in time. You don't know if anyone will. But you do know that if you don't fight now, if you don't hold your ground, the Soviets will sweep through and there'll be nothing left. Your breath comes in shallow gasps as you steady your rifle. The MG-42 feels like an extension of your body. The metal cold and unforgiving beneath your hands, but it's still the only thing you have to fight with. You line up your shot, your body moving on instinct, and fire. The recoil slams into your shoulder, but you don't stop. You don't even flinch. The Soviet soldiers fall, but more keep coming. They don't stop. They never do. The tanks are closing in now, the massive machines rolling forward with terrifying precision. You can hear their engines, the grinding of their metal treads on the snow, and you know that it's only a matter of time before they break through. You fire again, but the sound of the tank's cannon fills the air once more, the world shaking with the impact. You duck down, instinctively trying to shield yourself from the blast, but the force of it sends you sprawling again. You scramble to your feet, your heart pounding in your chest. The Soviets are coming. The tank is almost on top of you, and then through the chaos you hear it, the unmistakable sound of reinforcements. The distant rumble of German tanks, their engines roaring through the snowstorm. You don't know if they'll get here in time, but it's a flicker of hope, a spark of life in the middle of all this death. You keep firing, hoping, praying that this will be enough, that the reinforcements will tip the scales in your favor. But the Soviets are still closing in. They're not stopping. And you know that the fight isn't over yet. The ground shakes again, and you can feel the vibrations of the Soviet tanks as they roll forward. The first one is close now, its massive barrel aimed directly at you. You don't know how much longer you can hold out, how much longer you can survive this relentless onslaught. But you keep fighting. You keep firing, even though your body is screaming for rest. You can hear the cries of your comrades, their voices filled with desperation, but you can't afford to listen. You can't afford to stop. And then finally the reinforcements arrive. The rumble of German tanks grows louder, their heavy guns blasting through the snow. You don't know how long it will take for them to get close enough, but it feels like salvation. The Soviets falter for a moment, their lines breaking as the German reinforcements charge forward. The tanks begin to exchange fire, the deafening roar of cannon fire filling the air. You can hear the shrill whine of shells ricocheting, the battle growing in intensity as the Soviet tanks start to pull back. You don't know what's going to happen next. The battle is far from over, but for the first time it feels like there's a chance. You've survived this far. You can survive a little longer. And with the German reinforcements finally arriving, you feel a flicker of hope stir inside you. But you're not done yet. The tanks are still out there, the Soviets still fighting. The battle isn't over, but for now you hold your position, waiting for the next wave, waiting for the fight to continue. The battlefield has taken on a surreal quality. The sounds of combat, the relentless roar of the Soviet tanks, the sharp crack of rifles, the thunderous explosion of artillery seem distant now, muffled by the thick layers of snow and the overwhelming exhaustion coursing through your body. The reinforcements have arrived, German tanks roaring into the fray, but the chaos isn't over. In fact, it feels like it has only just begun. The Soviets are digging in their heels, determined to fight to the last, and you're caught in the middle of it all, just trying to survive. The snow continues to fall, thick and heavy, adding another layer of confusion to the battle. You can't see much anymore. the white haze of the snowstorm swallowing everything in its path. But you can feel the tension in the air, the constant pressure, the anticipation of the next explosion, the next shot. You can feel the weight of the fight pressing down on you, weighing down your limbs, your chest. But you don't stop. You can't afford to. The machine gun nest you've been manning is still firing, but its rhythm is beginning to waver. The gun is hot, the barrel steaming in the frigid air, and your fingers are starting to slip, numb from the cold and the constant recoil. But you don't stop. The Soviets are still out there, advancing through the snow, their infantry pushing forward with brutal determination. You take a breath, steadying yourself as you line up another shot. You fire, watching as another Soviet soldier falls, but there are always more. More charging forward, more pushing in from every angle. They keep coming, and you keep firing. It's the only thing you can do. The snow around you is thick with smoke now. The battlefield a twisted mess of blood, metal, and snow. Bodies, both Soviet and German, are scattered in every direction, their faces frozen in expressions of shock and terror. The once pristine white snow is now stained with the red of war. You can see the silhouettes of soldiers moving through the chaos, their forms barely visible in the swirling storm. You hear the cries of the wounded, but they seem distant, like they're coming from someone else, from another world. The roar of the tanks is louder now, shaking the ground beneath you. The Soviets have brought in more armor, and the German reinforcements are still trying to push them back. The battle has escalated, and there's no telling how much longer you'll be able to hold your position. The snow is no longer a battlefield. It's a graveyard, a place where the dead are buried beneath the weight of the fight. You can feel the cold biting at your skin, but it's not just the chill of winter. It's the coldness of war, the weight of the violence and death that has already claimed so many lives. The soldiers around you are fighting for their survival, just like you, but the battle feels endless. The Soviets are relentless, and you can hear their voices cutting through the storm, shouting orders, urging each other forward. They know what's at stake, and they're not backing down. The MG-42 continues to fire, but your hands are shaking now. The cold, the exhaustion, the constant barrage of enemy fire, it's all starting to take its toll. You can't feel your fingers, your hands numb from the cold, and your body is exhausted, every muscle screaming for relief. But you don't stop. You can't. You glance over at your comrades. They're all in the same state, frozen, weary, and yet determined. They keep fighting, despite the odds, despite the overwhelming enemy force. The Germans are pushing forward, but it's a desperate push. The Soviets are too strong, too well armed. The balance of the fight has shifted, and you can feel it. The tanks are getting closer now, their massive forms looming over the battlefield. You can see the Soviet infantry advancing behind them, their rifles raised, their eyes focused on their target, your position. You can feel the pressure building in your chest, a tightness that won't go away. The fear creeps in, but you push it aside. The cold has numbed everything, but the fear is still there, simmering beneath the surface. You fire again, but the sound of the MG-42 feels distant now, like it's coming from someone else. The noise of the battle is all-encompassing, drowning out everything else. Your shots are still landing, but the Soviets are closing in, their fire growing more intense with each passing second. The tanks are almost upon you now, their cannons aimed in your direction. You know that this is it. This is the moment when everything changes. You brace yourself, preparing for the worst, but the tanks don't stop. The Soviet soldiers are charging forward, their faces hidden beneath the snowstorm, but their determination is clear. The battle is no longer about holding the line, it's about survival. And you're caught in the middle, fighting not just for victory but for the chance to live through this hell. The first Soviet tank fires, and the explosion rips through the air. The blast is deafening, and you can feel the shock waves slam into your body, throwing you to the ground. The snow around you explodes into a cloud of debris, and for a moment everything goes black. Your vision swims, your body aches, but you push yourself up, forcing yourself to stay focused. The battle is still raging, and you're not dead yet. You scramble for your rifle, your hands shaking as you try to reload. The Soviet tanks are closer now, their firepower overwhelming. You know you can't hold this position much longer, but you're not giving up. You won't. You fire again, watching as another Soviet soldier drops to the snow, but there's no time to celebrate. The tanks are closing in, their cannons aimed directly at you. This is the final push. This is the moment when the battle will be decided, and you have no choice but to hold on for just a little longer. The rumble of Soviet tank engines is deafening now, as if the very earth itself is shaking with their advance. The distant roar of their cannons reverberates through the snow and into your bones. Each thunderous blast sends a ripple of fear and adrenaline coursing through your body. You are no longer fighting for victory or glory. Survival is all that matters now. Your rifle, once a tool of strength, now feels almost useless against the advancing juggernauts. But still you squeeze the trigger, the familiar rhythm of the MG-42 as it hurls rounds downrange. The first Soviet tank emerges from the smoke, its immense form cutting through the snowstorm like a predator, hunting its prey. You can see its gun barrel turning, swiveling toward your position, and for a moment everything slows. The snowflakes, thick and heavy, seem to pause mid-air. Time seems to stretch. You're aware of every sensation. The cold air that burns your lungs, the numbness in your fingers, the steady thud of your heart in your chest. Then, without warning, the tank fires. The explosion rocks the ground beneath you, and for an instant you are weightless. The blast is deafening, but the world around you becomes a blur of smoke, snow, and terror. Your body is thrown back, the shockwave knocking you off your feet and sending you tumbling into the deep snow. The air is thick with debris, and you can hear nothing except the ringing in your ears and the distant roar of the tank's engines. For a moment you lie there, disoriented, the world spinning around you. But there is no time to rest. You scramble to your feet, your body stiff and aching from the impact. Your rifle is still in your hands, but your vision is blurry, and the ground beneath you seems to shift. The cold is unbearable now, biting at your exposed skin. But you can feel something else, the weight of the battle pressing down on you, making every movement feel like a Herculean effort. You take a deep breath, forcing yourself to steady your shaking hands and push forward, through the snow and the smoke. The Soviet tanks continue their advance, their massive treads crushing the frozen earth beneath them. You know there is no stopping them. The MG-42 keeps roaring, a constant angry voice in the storm, but you know it won't be enough. Your comrades are still firing, still fighting, but you can see the desperation in their eyes. They are exhausted, their movements sluggish from the cold, their faces hollow from days of fighting. They're no different from you. They are human like you, and yet the cold, the tanks, and the enemy keep pushing forward, relentless. You wonder how long you can keep going. How much longer before the fear and the exhaustion take you too? But there's no time for that kind of thinking. You can't afford to give up, not now. Not while the battle is still being fought. The snow is thick with smoke now. The once pristine white landscape transformed into a hellscape of chaos and destruction. Bodies are scattered around you, soldiers frozen in place, their faces locked in expressions of shock, pain, and fear. Some lie in twisted, unnatural positions, their rifles still clutched in their hands. The battlefield has become a graveyard, and you are one of the last standing. But there's no time to mourn them. The Soviets are still coming, and you're still here, still fighting. The tanks grow closer, their guns aimed at your position, the force of their fire sending ripples of dread through your body. You fire again, but it feels like it's all for nothing. The enemy keeps coming. The Soviets are advancing on all fronts, their soldiers relentless, their tanks unyielding. You can hear the screams of the wounded, the cries of those who have already fallen, but you can't stop. You reload your rifle, your hands shaking, and fire once more. But the tanks are almost upon you now. You know this is it. This is the moment where everything changes. The tanks are too close, their firepower too great. The enemy is closing in, and you can't hold out much longer. But in that final, terrifying moment, you hear it. The sound of your own reinforcements. It's distant at first. A low rumble, but as it grows louder, you realize that the German tanks have arrived. Your comrades, though still standing, fire once again. A renewed wave of determination washing over them as they hear the rumbling of German reinforcements in the distance. For a split second, it feels like a light at the end of the tunnel. The Soviet tanks hesitate, their advance slowing as they become distracted by the new threat. The German reinforcements are here, their own tanks roaring across the battlefield, firing back at the Soviet onslaught. The moment of uncertainty is brief, but it's enough. The Soviets falter, their forces spread too thin. The battlefield for a moment tips in your favor. The tanks are distracted, and you and your comrades take the opportunity to push back. Your machine guns roaring again as you reclaim some ground. But the fight isn't over. It never is. The Soviets regroup, their infantry charging forward once more. The German tanks engage, and the battlefield becomes a cacophony of fire, smoke, and snow. You keep firing, your mind now numb with the strain, but your body is moving on instinct. You're too far gone to feel the cold, to feel the pain. You're simply surviving. The battle continues, but in that moment, when the Soviet tanks momentarily pull back, you realize something. The war is not just about victory. It's about survival. Holding on until the end, when the reinforcements finally arrive, when the tide turns in your favor. And though you can't be sure of what's to come, you know that for now the battle is far from over. You've lived to see another moment, and that's enough. The battle rages on, the sounds of artillery fire now drowned out by the roar of German reinforcements, their tanks joining the fray with a fierce determination. The ground shakes with every step they take, the vibrations pounding through your body as you reload your rifle, desperately trying to hold your position. You can hear the rumble of their engines in the distance, the promise of strength in numbers, but you know that this fight is far from over. The Soviet tanks are still there, still coming, and they aren't backing down. The air around you is thick with smoke and debris, the snow now a swirling mass of chaos. It's hard to see, hard to breathe, but you keep moving. Your legs ache from the constant pressure of trudging through the snow, but you can't stop. Not now. The enemy is closing in, and every second you hesitate could be your last. You glance over at your comrades. They're just as tired as you, just as weary from the hours of fighting. Their faces are worn, hollow from exhaustion, but there's still a spark of determination in their eyes. They won't give up. You can't either. The MG-42 is still firing. The rapid bursts of gunfire a constant angry rhythm in the chaos of battle. The recoil is familiar now. The sharp kick against your shoulder a reminder of the price you're paying. But it doesn't matter. The enemy is out there, and you'll keep fighting until you can't. Each shot you take is a small victory. Each soldier you bring down is a step closer to surviving. But with every victory comes the awareness that the Soviets are relentless. They won't stop. They can't be stopped. The tanks are getting closer. You can see them now. Their massive forms lumbering through the snow, their cannons aimed directly at your position. The sound of their engines is deafening, and you know that you have to make a decision. Do you stay here in the face of their overwhelming firepower, or do you make a run for it, hoping to find some kind of cover, some kind of escape? But there is no real escape. Not here, not now. The battlefield is too open, the snow too deep. The only choice is to stand and fight, to hold your position until the very end. You fire again, the sound of the MG-42 filling the air as the Soviet infantry pushes forward. You can see their faces now, their eyes determined but just as exhausted as yours. They're fighting for their survival, just like you are. And yet, despite their numbers, despite their weapons, you know you can't back down. You can't give them the satisfaction of seeing you falter. The snow is turning red now, the once pristine white battlefield stained with the blood of the fallen. Bodies lie scattered in every direction, their faces frozen in expressions of fear, of terror, of defiance. You don't have time to mourn them. You don't have time for anything except the fight. Your rifle feels heavier now, but you don't let it slow you down. You reload, fire again and then again, hoping that each shot lands where it needs to. The Soviets aren't giving you any space, but you can't give them any either. The German reinforcements are here, their tanks moving in to flank the Soviet forces, pushing them back. For a brief moment you feel a flicker of hope, an opening, a chance to break free from the onslaught. But the Soviets are pushing harder now, charging forward with renewed strength. They know what's at stake. You can hear their voices rising above the noise, their shouts of command cutting through the battle's chaos. You fire again, your shots finding their marks, but the enemy just keeps coming. The tanks are closer now, their massive barrels aimed directly at you. The ground shakes with each shot they fire, and you feel the tremor in your bones. The impact is deafening. You dive for cover as the shell explodes nearby, sending a wave of snow and debris into the air. You can't see for a moment, the smoke and dust filling your lungs, but you push through it, pulling yourself back to your feet. You have to keep fighting. You have no choice. The battle is turning in your favor, but only just. The Soviet forces are faltering, their tanks slowing, their infantry retreating. You can hear the cries of their wounded, the desperation in their voices, but you know that they'll be back. They always are. You can't afford to let up now. The German reinforcements are pressing forward, their tanks firing with precision, pushing the Soviets back into the storm, but they're still out there, still fighting. The battle is never really over. You look around. The battlefield is a mess of smoke, snow, and bodies, both yours and the enemy's. You fought through the worst of it, but there's no telling what will come next. The Soviet tanks have pulled back, but they're not gone. You know that the battle could resume at any moment, and you'll have to be ready. You will survive this fight, but you'll survive the next one too. Your comrades are still fighting, still holding their ground just as you are. You don't know how much longer you can keep it up, but you know you won't stop. Not while the reinforcements are here. Not while there's still a chance to win. You fire one last time and then another, until the Soviet soldiers around you begin to fall back. The snow is heavy with smoke, and you can barely see through it, but the sound of retreat is unmistakable. The Soviets are retreating, but the battle, like everything in this war, is never truly over. It's a fight for survival, for honor, for everything you've been trained to do. You hold your ground, ready for whatever comes next. The snow begins to fall harder, thicker now, and the battlefield around you becomes an indistinct blur of white and gray. The roar of artillery, the steady rhythm of gunfire, and the distant rumble of the tanks have started to fade into the background, replaced by an eerie silence that feels almost unnatural. The Soviet forces, having briefly faltered, are pulling back, retreating into the swirling storm of snow. But you know this moment of quiet won't last long. The battle is never really over. It's just a lull before the storm, a brief interlude before the next wave of violence crashes in. You stand there, your rifle still clutched tightly in your hands, your body trembling from exhaustion and cold, your mind a jumble of fragmented thoughts. Your comrades around you are doing the same, reloading, adjusting their positions, eyes constantly scanning for any sign of movement. Everyone is still on edge, still ready for the next wave. The ground beneath you is slick with the blood of fallen soldiers, both Soviet and German alike, and the once pristine snow is now a gruesome reflection of the price of this battle. Bodies lie scattered across the battlefield, frozen in the positions they fell in, faces locked in expressions of fear, anger, and pain. You can't stop looking at the dead. The faces of the fallen are haunting in the snow, their eyes wide open in shock, their bodies contorted as though the cold has held them in place, their final moments frozen in time. You can almost feel the cold creeping into your own limbs, your own chest, but you push it aside. You can't afford to think about it, not now. Not when the battle isn't over. The Soviet tanks are still visible in the distance, retreating but leaving behind a lingering sense of menace. You know they'll regroup, that they'll come back with more reinforcements. They're not gone. They're simply waiting, just as you are, for the right moment to strike again. The war has no real end here. It's a constant grinding wheel of violence and death, each battle a continuation of the last. You glance over at your comrades again. They're all in the same state, frozen, weary and battered. But there's a fire in their eyes. It's not the fire of victory. It's the fire of survival. They know, just as you do, that the Soviets aren't finished. This isn't over, not yet. The battle will continue no matter how much you wish it wouldn't. But in that moment, in that brief lull, you find a strange kind of peace. You're still alive. You're still here. And for now, that's all you need to focus on. The wind picks up again, blowing the snow in swirling gusts that sting your face. The storm is relentless, just like the war. It's as though the landscape itself is fighting against you, refusing to give you any respite. You can feel the exhaustion in your limbs, the cold that has seeped into your bones, but there's no time for weakness. You shake it off, forcing yourself to move, to reload your rifle, to stand tall in the face of what's to come. You know the Soviet tanks are regrouping, getting ready for another push. You can see their shapes in the distance, dark figures against the pale backdrop of the snowstorm, their massive guns swiveling to point toward the German positions. The battle isn't over, and you won't be spared the coming assault, but there's no fear now. You're past that. The fear has been replaced by a single all-consuming drive: survival. You will hold this position. You will survive. Your rifle is ready, your comrades are ready, and the MG-42 is still humming its death song. You take a deep breath, steady yourself, and brace for the next wave of Soviet tanks and infantry. The sky above is darkening, the storm worsening, but you don't care. You've fought through worse. You've survived worse. And you will continue to fight until you can't fight any longer. The Soviets are regrouping, but you're ready. The battle is far from over, but for now you're still standing. You are still fighting. And that, in this frozen hellscape, is enough. The roar of Soviet artillery punctuates the air once again, and you can feel the earth tremble beneath your feet. The first blast is distant, but its power is undeniable. Then another, closer this time, and then another. Each explosion reverberates through your body, shaking the cold from your limbs, but you push it aside. You've been in battles before, and you know the drill. The shelling will continue until the enemy is ready to move in. The sound is deafening, almost disorienting, and yet you can't stop. You can't pause. You have to stay alert. You have to survive. Your comrades scattered along the trench are taking cover, crouching low to avoid the barrage. Some press their faces into the cold earth. Others are staring out through their rifle sights, waiting for the inevitable. The tanks are coming. You know it. You can hear them. The deep rumbling sound of their engines is unmistakable as they roll through the snowstorm. The ground shakes with each passing second, and the air fills with the heavy thud of their treads cutting through the earth. The MG-42 continues its deadly song, but even you know it won't be enough against these monsters of steel. The Soviet tanks are massive, their cannons poised for destruction, and their advance is a certainty. But what other choice do you have? You can't run. You can't escape. You've been in the middle of the fight for too long to back down now. Survival means holding your ground no matter the odds. Even if you're outnumbered, even if the enemy is armed with the terrifying might of tanks and artillery, you raise your rifle, taking aim at the advancing infantry, the Soviet soldiers pushing forward like an unrelenting tide. You fire again and again, but you know it's futile. The battle is no longer just about shooting, about hitting your target. It's about endurance, about waiting for the moment when the tide turns in your favor. And in the midst of this overwhelming chaos, you hold on to that flicker of hope. Reinforcements are on the way. The German tanks are roaring in the distance, their engines vibrating through the snow like an impending thunderstorm. You know they're close. You can only hope they arrive in time. You glance at your comrades again. Their faces are pale with exhaustion, their eyes sunken from the cold and the never-ending strain of battle. They're not talking. Not now, they don't need to. The tension is palpable. Every soldier around you knows that the coming moments could be their last. They've all seen the carnage of this battlefield. The bodies of their fallen comrades are still scattered in the snow, reminders of the cost of war. But they push forward anyway, each one focused on the task ahead. They fire, reload, fire again. There's no hesitation, no fear, just the will to survive. The Soviet tanks are closer now. You can see their hulking shapes cutting through the storm, their turrets turning, their cannons ready to fire. The air seems to freeze in anticipation. The MG-42 is still roaring, but its fire feels futile. Your rifle feels too light now, almost insignificant in comparison to the massive steel behemoths approaching. But you keep fighting. You keep firing. You don't stop. You can't. The first tank fires. The sound is deafening, and the impact of the shell tears through the snow, sending a shockwave of force into your chest. The ground shakes and you brace yourself, digging your boots into the frozen earth, trying to keep your balance. But the force of the explosion is overwhelming, and the force pushes you backward, knocking you off your feet. For a moment, the world spins and you lose your breath. But you're not dead, not yet. You scramble to your feet, your body aching, your mind dizzy, but there's no time to waste. The battle is still raging, and you are still in the thick of it. You hear the screams of your comrades, the shouts of soldiers trying to regroup, trying to find cover. But the Soviets are relentless. They keep coming. They've seen the damage they've caused, but it hasn't stopped them. The tanks are still moving forward, the infantry still pushing ahead, and you know they won't stop until they've broken through. The firepower of the Soviet forces is overwhelming, but you don't back down. You don't run. You raise your rifle again, your hands trembling with cold and fatigue, but you steady yourself. You fire, and for a brief moment you feel the satisfaction of a hit. A Soviet soldier drops to the snow, but it's nothing. A single soldier, a drop in the ocean, The Soviets are closing in, and their numbers are too many. You hear the roar of another explosion, and then another. The ground shakes again, and this time it feels like the earth itself is protesting. You take a deep breath and force yourself to focus. Your rifle feels heavier now, its weight pressing against you, but it's the only weapon you have. You squeeze the trigger again, but the Soviet tanks are closing in, and the world seems to narrow into a single, unavoidable truth. This is it. This is the moment. But even as the enemy presses in, even as the tanks approach with terrifying certainty, there's something else. You hear the distant rumble of reinforcements. The German tanks are here, roaring across the battlefield, charging into the fray. You can see them now, their massive forms cutting through the snowstorm, their cannons firing. It's a glimmer of hope, a fleeting moment in the chaos, but it's enough to keep you going. The Soviets falter for a moment, distracted by the oncoming threat, but only for a moment. You don't have long, but for now you hold your ground, your rifle steady in your hands. The ground trembles again, this time with a force that shakes your very bones. The German reinforcements are here. Their tanks are roaring through the snowstorm, their engines thundering over the battlefield like a gathering storm. The Soviet advance falters, their tanks pausing, their infantry hesitating as they realize they're not alone. The tide is turning, but not in the way you had hoped. The Soviets, still pressing forward, are now faced with an additional wave of German firepower. The battlefield is a chaotic dance of steel and flesh, the roar of tank engines mixing with the crackle of rifle fire. It's a momentary reprieve, but you know it won't last long. You glance toward the German tanks, the hulking metal beasts rolling across the battlefield with a terrifying grace. Their cannons open fire, sending explosive rounds crashing into the Soviet tanks. The shock waves of each hit send tremors through the earth, and you feel the force of them in your chest. The tanks, both Soviet and German, engage in a deadly exchange of fire, their rounds tearing through the snow, the air, and anything in their path. The explosions are deafening, and the smoke begins to thicken, enveloping everything around you. It's hard to see, hard to breathe, but you don't have time to think about it. The battlefield is now divided into a brutal tug of war, the Soviet tanks trying to push through, the German tanks fighting back with everything they have. You can hear the roar of their engines as they race across the field, their guns spitting fire, but you also hear the cries of soldiers, your comrades and the Soviets, still fighting in the snow. The war is no longer about positions, it's about survival. It's about who can hold out just long enough to outlast the other. You snap your focus back to the task at hand, staying alive. The Soviet soldiers are still charging, their infantry moving in waves, and you realize that the German tanks can only do so much. They can't hold the line forever. It's your job now, along with your comrades, to stop the enemy's advance. You raise your rifle again, the weight of it heavy in your cold, stiff hands. The numbness in your fingers makes it hard to hold steady, but you force yourself to focus. The Soviets are still coming, and you have to be ready. The MG-42 roars beside you, the weapon an extension of your own body as you squeeze the trigger. The sound of the gun is almost deafening in the chaos of the battlefield, but it's a sound that offers you comfort. It's a sign that you're still here, still fighting. The Soviet infantry falls under your fire, but they don't stop. They keep coming, like a wave crashing against a rock. For every soldier you bring down, 2 more seem to take their place. The tanks rumble in the distance, and you know that the battle is about to reach a fever pitch. The snow around you is now thick with smoke and blood, a scene of war in its purest, most brutal form. You can barely see through the haze, The once sterile landscape of snow now transformed into a twisted, chaotic mess of bodies and metal. The snow is stained red, and the air smells of gunpowder and death. You don't have time to think about the cost of it all. You don't have time to wonder how many soldiers have fallen, how many lives have been lost. You just keep moving, keep firing, and keep hoping that the tide will turn in your favor. The Soviet tanks are getting closer. You can see them now. Their massive forms slicing through the smoke and snow like predators stalking their prey. Their guns swivel, aimed directly at your position, and you feel a jolt of fear. You know that if one of those tanks hits your position, there will be no surviving it. But you don't have a choice. You can't run. You can't retreat. All you can do is fight, and you fight with everything you have. The sound of the tanks firing is overwhelming. The cannon blasts rip through the air, the force of each explosion shaking the ground beneath your feet. You can feel the pressure of it in your chest, but you don't falter. You stay low, keeping yourself hidden as best you can, and you wait for the right moment. The Soviets are closing in, their tanks just on the edge of your position. You fire again, sending a hail of bullets into the advancing infantry. You can see the Soviets falling, their bodies crumpling into the snow, but they don't stop. They just keep coming, pushing forward with relentless determination. You take another shot, but it feels like a futile effort. The tanks are too close now, their massive barrels aimed directly at your position. The Soviet soldiers are charging, their rifles raised, their faces determined. You can't stop them. You can't hold out forever. But you fight anyway. The fear creeps in again, but you push it aside. You have to. The cold has already numbed your body. The exhaustion already clouded your mind. The only thing that matters now is holding the line. Just when you think the battle can't get any worse, you hear it. The unmistakable sound of German reinforcements. More tanks. The rumble of their engines fills the air as they charge forward to join the fray. The Soviets hesitate for just a moment, distracted by the arrival of more German firepower. But they don't retreat. They push harder, their tanks firing back at the German reinforcements, their soldiers advancing relentlessly. But the tide has turned. The German tanks are here, and with them there's hope. You can feel the shift. The Soviet advance has slowed, but it hasn't stopped. They're still out there, still pushing forward. But now they're no longer the unstoppable force they once were. The battle isn't over, but for the first time in hours you let yourself breathe. The reinforcements have arrived. There's a chance. The battlefield has shifted again, and with it a new wave of hope rises. The German reinforcements have arrived, roaring onto the field with the full power of their tanks, their cannons thundering into the Soviet ranks. The Soviet tanks falter for just a moment, their momentum stalling as the German forces charge in with everything they've got. The sudden appearance of the reinforcements is like a breath of fresh air, but the tension hasn't eased yet. The Soviets may have been temporarily slowed, but they're not finished. They've retreated into the shadows of the snowstorm, regrouping and reassessing, preparing for another wave. You know this brief respite is nothing more than the calm before the next storm. You feel the pulse of adrenaline race through you as you watch the German tanks press forward. The air is thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder, the very atmosphere of the battlefield heavy with the pressure of war. You hear the creaking of tank treads, the sharp hiss of artillery fire, the distant echo of explosions, and the growing rumble of approaching Soviet reinforcements. The snow continues to swirl around you, the cold biting into every exposed inch of your skin. But it's different now. You've been given a moment to breathe, but there's no time for rest. You still have to hold the line, still have to keep your focus. Your rifle feels heavier in your hands now, and your body aches from the constant strain. The exhaustion is catching up with you, but the fight isn't over. You watch as the German reinforcements press forward, their tanks rolling steadily through the snow. The roar of their engines and the firepower of their cannons are like a new rhythm to the chaos, a new beat in the symphony of destruction. The Soviet forces, once so sure of their dominance, are now being challenged on every front. The tide is turning, but it's not done yet. The Soviets have regrouped, and they'll be back with a vengeance. You check your ammunition, reload, and prepare yourself for the inevitable. The soldiers around you are doing the same, their faces set with grim determination. There's no fear now, just the deep instinctual need to survive. The cold has numbed your body, but the adrenaline is sharper now, clearer. You're not fighting just for survival anymore. You're fighting for the chance to make it through the day, to hold your position just long enough to see the reinforcements finish their push. The snow thickens, but you don't mind the storm. It's a strange thing, really, how the snow can feel so comforting in such a brutal place. The world around you is blanketed in white, but there's no peace in it. There's no tranquility. The snow may cover the battlefield, but it can't cover the chaos of war, can't hide the brutality of it all. The snow is a mask, a false veil over the grim reality of what's unfolding before you. The Soviet tanks are still out there, hiding in the white cloud of snow, biding their time. You know they'll strike again, but you can't afford to think about when or where. You focus on what's in front of you. The German tanks moving through the storm, the infantry charging ahead, the soldiers beside you still fighting tooth and nail for every inch of ground. You glance at your comrades. They're exhausted just as you are, but their eyes still burn with the will to survive. You don't speak to each other now. There's no need. The battle is more than just a fight for survival. It's a test of endurance, a test of how long you can hold out before the enemy breaks you. And as the Soviet tanks reappear through the swirling storm, you realize one thing: this is the moment. This is the test. This is where you make your stand. You steady your rifle and take aim. The tank ahead moves closer, its massive frame blocking out the world around you. The barrel of its gun swivels toward you, and you feel the heat of its presence. It's terrifying, but you don't hesitate. You squeeze the trigger, and for a split second you hope your shot lands. The MG-42 fires again, its deafening roar ringing in your ears. You see the Soviet soldiers advancing, their rifles raised, their faces masked by the storm. But there's a fire in their eyes. They're not retreating. They're charging forward with everything they have. The tanks continue to rumble, their massive guns spitting fire, their shells tearing through the snow. But the Germans are here now, and they're not backing down. The Soviets are fighting desperately, but they're not as strong as they were. The German tanks are closing in, their guns roaring, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, the tide feels like it's finally turning. You take a breath, steadying yourself. You can feel your body shaking, but you push it down. You reload your rifle and fire again, watching as another Soviet soldier drops to the snow. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to focus with the constant barrage of fire. The snow, the blood, the death. But you do it. You fight on because it's the only thing you can do. The Soviets, despite their numbers, despite their tanks, are beginning to falter. You can see it in their faces, the shift in their movements, the hesitation in their fire. They know the Germans are here in force now, and their momentum is beginning to break. They're not giving up, but they're losing ground. And that's all you need. The battle is far from over. The reinforcements have arrived, but there's still much to fight for. The Soviets may retreat, but they'll be back. They always come back. But for now you stand firm, rifle in hand and ready for whatever comes next. This fight isn't over, but you're still standing, and that's all that matters. The ground continues to shake beneath your feet, the heavy rumble of Soviet tanks and the clash of steel filling the air. The cold seems to seep deeper into your bones, but the adrenaline surging through your veins keeps you moving. You glance around at your comrades, eyes narrowed, faces gaunt, hands shaking from exhaustion, but they're still here, still fighting, just like you. The German tanks, massive behemoths of war, have given the Soviets pause, but the fight is far from over. The enemy isn't retreating, not yet, and you know that they'll regroup and push forward again with renewed fury. The battlefield is a blur of fire and snow, a landscape that seems to change with every explosion, every shot fired. The air is thick with smoke, the stench of burning metal, gunpowder and blood. You can feel it in your chest, the weight of it all, the horror of the war that's happening around you. But there's no time to dwell on it. You can't afford to. You've seen too much already, and there's still more to come. You reload your rifle, your hands stiff from the cold, and take aim at a group of advancing Soviet soldiers. They're charging forward, their rifles raised, their faces hidden beneath the falling snow. You fire and your bullet finds its mark, but for every Soviet soldier you bring down, 2 more take their place. You can hear their voices through the chaos, their shouts and orders rising above the noise of the battle, but you can't focus on them. You have to focus on the fight in front of you. You have to survive. The Soviet tanks are closing in again, their massive forms cutting through the smoke and snow. You can see the glint of their gun barrels as they swivel in your direction. The sound of their engines is deafening, their treads crunching through the snow with terrifying power. They're coming. They're not stopping. The German reinforcements, though fierce and determined, are struggling to push them back. It's a war of attrition, and the Soviets have the numbers. But the Germans are holding their ground, and you too will hold yours. You fire again, your aim steady despite the tremors running through your hands. You don't know if you're hitting anything, but you keep firing, hoping that your shots will make a difference. The snow is stained with blood now, the red of war mixing with the white of winter. It's a grotesque contrast, one that makes your stomach turn, but you can't stop to think about it. You can't stop. Your comrades are still firing, still holding their ground, but you can see the weariness in their eyes, the toll this battle has taken on them. The cold, the exhaustion, the constant barrage of fire from both the Soviets and the German reinforcements. It's all beginning to take its toll. But there's no time to dwell on that now. You reload, aim, and fire again. Your thoughts a blur of instinct and survival. The battle around you is a blur of motion and sound, but you manage to focus, even for a moment. The Soviet tanks are closer now, their massive forms pressing in, their cannons aimed directly at your position. You can hear their engines roaring, feel the vibration of the ground as they move forward, and you know that you can't hold out much longer. You glance over at the German tanks, still pushing forward, still engaging the Soviet forces. But it's a brutal, exhausting push, and you can see that the tide is beginning to turn in the Soviets' favor. You glance at the horizon, hoping for another break in the clouds, for another flicker of light to pierce through the snowstorm. But the sky remains dark, the storm continuing unabated. The Soviet tanks are still advancing, their infantry pushing forward in waves, and you know that the battle is not over yet. You've been fighting for hours and you feel the weight of it, the cold, the fear, the exhaustion, but you can't stop, not yet. Not when survival is still within reach. The Soviet tanks are now within range, their massive cannons pointed directly at your position. You can feel the heat from their barrels, the threat of their firepower like a looming shadow, and your heart pounds in your chest. The MG-42 continues to roar, and the sound is almost comforting now. It's a constant, a reminder that you're still here, still fighting. But the tanks are too close, the infantry too many, and you know that the end is near. And then in the midst of the chaos you hear it, the unmistakable sound of more German reinforcements. Their engines roar through the snow, and you can feel the ground shake once more as more tanks come to join the fight. The Soviet tanks hesitate, their advance faltering for just a moment, and you seize the opportunity. You fire once more. Your aim steady despite the shaking in your hands, and you watch as another Soviet soldier falls. But the battle is not over. Not yet. The German reinforcements are here, but so are the Soviets. The tanks, the soldiers, the artillery, it's all closing in, and the battle is about to reach its fever pitch. But you don't stop. You can't. This is the moment. This is your stand. The fight isn't over, but you're still here, still alive. And you will survive. The ground shakes once more, a deafening rumble as the Soviet tanks fire their heavy shells. The air is thick with the acrid smell of burning fuel, and the acrid taste of smoke in your throat. You feel the force of every explosion in your chest, each blast sending shock waves through the battlefield, rattling your bones. The air is so thick with smoke that it's hard to breathe, hard to see, and yet you keep firing. You raise your rifle, steadying your aim even as the ground beneath you trembles. You can hear the distant rumble of artillery fire as the Germans respond in kind, their tanks roaring through the snow. But it feels like an eternity before their shots reach the Soviets. You are caught between the two, trapped in the relentless middle of it all. Your body is aching from the hours of fighting, every inch of you protesting the exhaustion and the cold, but you don't stop. You can't. The battle rages on, the Soviets pressing harder now, their infantry charging forward in waves, their tanks pushing through the snowstorm. You fire again, your rifle's recoil slamming into your shoulder, but it's barely enough to keep the Soviets at bay. Their numbers are overwhelming, their forces pressing on with a brutal determination, each moment feeling like the last. You glance over at the German tanks, their massive forms cutting through the storm, the sound of their engines filling the air as they close the distance with the Soviet forces. But even with the reinforcements, the tide of battle feels as though it's shifting again. The Soviet soldiers advancing, their tanks firing with terrifying precision. The snow around you is a battlefield of ice and fire, the white snow stained with blood, the once pristine landscape now a wreckage of war. The Soviet tanks move forward, their massive guns trained on your position, and you know this could be it. There is nowhere to hide, no escape from the oncoming storm. But you don't run. You can't. The sound of the Soviet engines, the deep rumble of their tanks as they press forward, fills your mind, but you stay rooted to the spot, rifle in hand, waiting for the right moment. The Soviet soldiers are closing in now, their figures moving through the storm like shadows, their rifles raised. You fire again, but the recoil of your rifle feels like it might send you tumbling backward. The blast of gunfire, the crack of rifles, the roar of the tanks, it's all a blur now, a distorted nightmare. You can barely hear yourself think. All you can hear is the fight, the battle that surrounds you, the battle that has consumed you. For a moment it feels as though the entire world is suspended in time. The snow falls heavier, blanketing everything in its white, cold embrace. The sound of the battle becomes muffled, like it's happening in some other world far away. You can see the Soviet tanks in the distance, moving forward like unstoppable forces of nature, their massive guns pointed toward you. And for the briefest moment, You wonder if this is how it ends. But then you hear it, the sound of a new round of German reinforcements. The rumble of their tanks fills the air, louder now, their presence like a wave crashing down, breaking against the Soviet assault. The moment of hesitation from the Soviets is brief, but it's enough. The German tanks engage with a furious roar, their cannons firing with terrifying accuracy, and for a brief moment you feel the shift. The Soviets hesitate, their advance faltering under the heavy fire of the German tanks. The tide is turning, but it's not over yet. The Soviets regroup quickly, charging forward once more. You can hear the voices of their soldiers shouting, their cries echoing through the storm. But you push the sound aside. You don't need to hear them. You need to survive. You fire again, your hands numb with cold, your body screaming for rest, but you keep firing. The snow is filled with smoke and debris, the air thick with the stench of burning fuel and blood, and yet you fight on. The Soviets are relentless, their numbers overwhelming, but you don't stop. You can't. The German reinforcements are still pressing forward, their tanks continuing to fire, their soldiers charging with a fierce determination. You know the battle isn't over yet, but for the first time in hours it feels like there's a chance. The Soviet tanks are still here, but they're no longer pushing forward with the same intensity. The German tanks have given them pause. The battle has become a war of attrition, but the Germans are holding their ground. You reload your rifle, your movements slow and stiff from the cold, but you do it. You have to. You squeeze the trigger again, your eyes focused on the Soviet infantry moving through the storm, and you watch as another soldier falls. But the fight isn't over. It's far from it. The battle rages on, but the Germans are beginning to push back. You hear the roar of a Soviet tank's cannon, and you know it's only a matter of time before they fire again. But for now you can feel the shift. The Germans have broken the Soviet momentum, and the tide is beginning to turn in your favor. You glance at the men around you. They're still standing, still fighting. They don't say anything, there's no need. They know the cost of this war. They know what's at stake. But they're still here, and so are you. For now, that's enough. The battle isn't over. But for the first time in what feels like an eternity, there's a glimmer of hope. The Soviets are still advancing, but the German tanks are holding their ground. The battle is shifting slowly, but it's shifting nonetheless. And for now, that's enough to keep you fighting. The snow begins to fall harder, thicker now, and the battlefield around you becomes an indistinct blur of white and gray. The roar of artillery, the steady rhythm of gunfire, and the distant rumble of the tanks have started to fade into the background, replaced by an eerie silence that feels almost unnatural. The Soviet forces, having briefly faltered, are pulling back, retreating into the swirling storm of snow. But you know this moment of quiet won't last long. The battle is never really over. It's just a lull before the storm, a brief interlude before the next wave of violence crashes in. You stand there, your rifle still clutched tightly in your hands, your body trembling from exhaustion and cold, your mind a jumble of fragmented thoughts. Your comrades around you are doing the same, reloading, adjusting their positions, eyes constantly scanning for any sign of movement. Everyone is still on edge, still ready for the next wave. The ground beneath you is slick with the blood of fallen soldiers, both Soviet and German alike, and the once pristine snow is now a gruesome reflection of the price of this battle. Bodies lie scattered across the battlefield, frozen in the positions they fell in, faces locked in expressions of fear, anger, and pain. You can't stop looking at the dead. The faces of the fallen are haunting in the snow, their eyes wide open in shock, their bodies contorted as though the cold has held them in place, their final moments frozen in time. You can almost feel the cold creeping into your own limbs, your own chest, but you push it aside. You can't afford to think about it, not now. Not when the battle isn't over. The Soviet tanks are still visible in the distance, retreating but leaving behind a lingering sense of menace. You know they'll regroup, that they'll come back with more reinforcements. They're not gone. They're simply waiting, just as you are, for the right moment to strike again. The war has no real end here. It's a constant grinding wheel of violence and death. Each battle a continuation of the last. You glance over at your comrades again. They're all in the same state, frozen, weary and battered. But there's a fire in their eyes. It's not the fire of victory. It's the fire of survival. They know, just as you do, that the Soviets aren't finished. This isn't over, not yet. The battle will continue no matter how much you wish it wouldn't. But in that moment, in that brief lull, you find a strange kind of peace. You're still alive. You're still here. And for now, that's all you need to focus on. The wind picks up again, blowing the snow in swirling gusts that sting your face. The storm is relentless, just like the war. It's as though the landscape itself is fighting against you, refusing to give you any respite. You can feel the exhaustion in your limbs, the cold that has seeped into your bones, but there's no time for weakness. You shake it off, forcing yourself to move, to reload your rifle, to stand tall in the face of what's to come. You know the Soviet tanks are regrouping, getting ready for another push. You can see their shapes in the distance, dark figures against the pale backdrop of the snowstorm, their massive guns swiveling to point toward the German positions. The battle isn't over, and you won't be spared the coming assault, but there's no fear now. You're past that. The fear has been replaced by a single all-consuming drive: survival. You will hold this position. You will survive. Your rifle is ready, your comrades are ready, and the MG-42 is still humming its death song. You take a deep breath, steady yourself, and brace for the next wave of Soviet tanks and infantry. The sky above is darkening, the storm worsening, but you don't care. You've fought through worse. You've survived worse. And you will continue to fight until you can't fight any longer. The Soviets are regrouping, but you're ready. The battle is far from over, but for now you're still standing. You are still fighting. And that, in this frozen hellscape, is enough. The roar of Soviet artillery punctuates the air once again, and you can feel the earth tremble beneath your feet. The first blast is distant, but its power is undeniable. Then another, closer this time, and then another. Each explosion reverberates through your body, shaking the cold from your limbs, but you push it aside. You've been in battles before, and you know the drill. The shelling will continue until the enemy is ready to move in. The sound is deafening, almost disorienting, and yet you can't stop. You can't pause. You have to stay alert. You have to survive. Your comrades scattered along the trench are taking cover, crouching low to avoid the barrage. Some press their faces into the cold earth. Others are staring out through their rifle sights, waiting for the inevitable. The tanks are coming. You know it. You can hear them. The deep rumbling sound of their engines is unmistakable as they roll through the snowstorm. The ground shakes with each passing second, and the air fills with the heavy thud of their treads cutting through the earth. The MG-42 continues its deadly song, but even you know it won't be enough against these monsters of steel. The Soviet tanks are massive, their cannons poised for destruction, and their advance is a certainty. But what other choice do you have? You can't run. You can't escape. You've been in the middle of the fight for too long to back down now. Survival means holding your ground no matter the odds. Even if you're outnumbered, even if the enemy is armed with the terrifying might of tanks and artillery, You raise your rifle, taking aim at the advancing infantry, the Soviet soldiers pushing forward like an unrelenting tide. You fire again and again, but you know it's futile. The battle is no longer just about shooting, about hitting your target. It's about endurance, about waiting for the moment when the tide turns in your favor. And in the midst of this overwhelming chaos, you hold on to that flicker of hope. Reinforcements are on the way. The German tanks are roaring in the distance, their engines vibrating through the snow like an impending thunderstorm. You know they're close. You can only hope they arrive in time. You glance at your comrades again. Their faces are pale with exhaustion, their eyes sunken from the cold and the never-ending strain of battle. They're not talking. Not now, they don't need to. The tension is palpable. Every soldier around you knows that the coming moments could be their last. They've all seen the carnage of this battlefield. The bodies of their fallen comrades are still scattered in the snow, reminders of the cost of war. But they push forward anyway, each one focused on the task ahead. They fire, reload, fire again. There's no hesitation, no fear, just the will to survive. The Soviet tanks are closer now. You can see their hulking shapes cutting through the storm, their turrets turning, their cannons ready to fire. The air seems to freeze in anticipation. The MG-42 is still roaring, but its fire feels futile. Your rifle feels too light now, almost insignificant in comparison to the massive steel behemoths approaching. But you keep fighting. You keep firing. You don't stop. You can't. The first tank fires. The sound is deafening, and the impact of the shell tears through the snow, sending a shockwave of force into your chest. The ground shakes and you brace yourself, digging your boots into the frozen earth, trying to keep your balance. But the force of the explosion is overwhelming, and the force pushes you backward, knocking you off your feet. For a moment, the world spins and you lose your breath. But you're not dead, not yet. You scramble to your feet, your body aching, your mind dizzy, but there's no time to waste. The battle is still raging, and you are still in the thick of it. You hear the screams of your comrades, the shouts of soldiers trying to regroup, trying to find cover. But the Soviets are relentless. They keep coming. They've seen the damage they've caused, but it hasn't stopped them. The tanks are still moving forward, the infantry still pushing ahead, and you know they won't stop until they've broken through. The firepower of the Soviet forces is overwhelming, but you don't back down. You don't run. You raise your rifle again, your hands trembling with cold and fatigue, but you steady yourself. You fire, and for a brief moment you feel the satisfaction of a hit. A Soviet soldier drops to the snow, but it's nothing. A single soldier, a drop in the ocean. The Soviets are closing in, and their numbers are too many. You hear the roar of another explosion, and then another. The ground shakes again, and this time it feels like the earth itself is protesting. You take a deep breath and force yourself to focus. Your rifle feels heavier now, its weight pressing against you, but it's the only weapon you have. You squeeze the trigger again, but the Soviet tanks are closing in, and the world seems to narrow into a single, unavoidable truth. This is it. This is the moment. But even as the enemy presses in, even as the tanks approach with terrifying certainty, there's something else. You hear the distant rumble of reinforcements. The German tanks are here, roaring across the battlefield, charging into the fray. You can see them now, their massive forms cutting through the snowstorm, their cannons firing. It's a glimmer of hope, a fleeting moment in the chaos, but it's enough to keep you going. The Soviets falter for a moment, distracted by the oncoming threat, but only for a moment. You don't have long, but for now you hold your ground, your rifle steady in your hands. The ground trembles again, this time with a force that shakes your very bones. The German reinforcements are here. Their tanks are roaring through the snowstorm, their engines thundering over the battlefield like a gathering storm. The Soviet advance falters, their tanks pausing, their infantry hesitating as they realize they're not alone. The tide is turning, but not in the way you had hoped. The Soviets, still pressing forward, are now faced with an additional wave of German firepower. The battlefield is a chaotic dance of steel and flesh, the roar of tank engines mixing with the crackle of rifle fire. It's a momentary reprieve, but you know it won't last long. You glance toward the German tanks, the hulking metal beasts rolling across the battlefield with a terrifying grace. Their cannons open fire, sending explosive rounds crashing into the Soviet tanks. The shock waves of each hit send tremors through the earth, and you feel the force of them in your chest. The tanks, both Soviet and German, engage in a deadly exchange of fire, their rounds tearing through the snow, the air, and anything in their path. The explosions are deafening, and the smoke begins to thicken, enveloping everything around you. It's hard to see, hard to breathe, but you don't have time to think about it. The battlefield is now divided into a brutal tug of war, the Soviet tanks trying to push through, the German tanks fighting back with everything they have. You can hear the roar of their engines as they race across the field, their guns spitting fire. But you also hear the cries of soldiers, your comrades and the Soviets, still fighting in the snow. The war is no longer about positions. It's about survival. It's about who can hold out just long enough to outlast the other. You snap your focus back to the task at hand, staying alive. The Soviet soldiers are still charging, their infantry moving in waves, and you realize that the German tanks can only do so much. They can't hold the line forever. It's your job now, along with your comrades, to stop the enemy's advance. You raise your rifle again, the weight of it heavy in your cold, stiff hands. The numbness in your fingers makes it hard to hold steady, but you force yourself to focus. The Soviets are still coming, and you have to be ready. The MG-42 roars beside you, the weapon an extension of your own body as you squeeze the trigger. The sound of the gun is almost deafening in the chaos of the battlefield, but it's a sound that offers you comfort. It's a sign that you're still here, still fighting. The Soviet infantry falls under your fire, but they don't stop. They keep coming, like a wave crashing against a rock. For every soldier you bring down, two more seem to take their place. The tanks rumble in the distance, and you know that the battle is about to reach a fever pitch. The snow around you is now thick with smoke and blood, a scene of war in its purest, most brutal form. You can barely see through the haze, the once sterile landscape of snow now transformed into a twisted, chaotic mess of bodies and metal. The snow is stained red, and the air smells of gunpowder and death. You don't have time to think about the cost of it all. You don't have time to wonder how many soldiers have fallen, how many lives have been lost. You just keep moving, keep firing, and keep hoping that the tide will turn in your favor. The Soviet tanks are getting closer. You can see them now, their massive forms slicing through the smoke and snow like predators stalking their prey. Their guns swivel, aimed directly at your position, and you feel a jolt of fear. You know that if one of those tanks hits your position, there will be no surviving it. But you don't have a choice. You can't run. You can't retreat. All you can do is fight, and you fight with everything you have. The sound of the tanks firing is overwhelming. The cannon blasts rip through the air, the force of each explosion shaking the ground beneath your feet. You can feel the pressure of it in your chest, but you don't falter. You stay low, keeping yourself hidden as best you can, and you wait for the right moment. The Soviets are closing in, their tanks just on the edge of your position. You fire again, sending a hail of bullets into the advancing infantry. You can see the Soviets falling, their bodies crumpling into the snow, but they don't stop. They just keep coming, pushing forward with relentless determination. You take another shot, but it feels like a futile effort. The tanks are too close now, their massive barrels aimed directly at your position. The Soviet soldiers are charging, their rifles raised, their faces determined. You can't stop them. You can't hold out forever. But you fight anyway. The fear creeps in again, but you push it aside. You have to. The cold has already numbed your body. The exhaustion already clouded your mind. The only thing that matters now is holding the line. Just when you think the battle can't get any worse, you hear it. The unmistakable sound of German reinforcements. More tanks. The rumble of their engines fills the air as they charge forward to join the fray. The Soviets hesitate for just a moment, distracted by the arrival of more German firepower. But they don't retreat. They push harder, their tanks firing back at the German reinforcements, their soldiers advancing relentlessly. But the tide has turned. The German tanks are here, and with them there's hope. You can feel the shift. The Soviet advance has slowed, but it hasn't stopped. They're still out there, still pushing forward. But now they're no longer the unstoppable force they once were. The battle isn't over, but for the first time in hours you let yourself breathe. The reinforcements have arrived. There's a chance. Their eyes still burn with the will to survive. You don't speak to each other now. There's no need. The battle is more than just a fight for survival. It's a test of endurance, a test of how long you can hold out before the enemy breaks you. And as the Soviet tanks reappear through the swirling storm, you realize one thing: this is the moment. This is the test. This is where you make your stand. You steady your rifle and take aim. The tank ahead moves closer, its massive frame blocking out the world around you. The barrel of its gun swivels toward you, and you feel the heat of its presence. It's terrifying, but you don't hesitate. You squeeze the trigger, and for a split second you hope your shot lands. The MG-42 fires again, its deafening roar ringing in your ears. You see the Soviet soldiers advancing, their rifles raised, their faces masked by the storm. But there's a fire in their eyes. They're not retreating. They're charging forward with everything they have. The tanks continue to rumble, their massive guns spitting fire, their shells tearing through the snow. But the Germans are here now, and they're not backing down. The Soviets are fighting desperately, but they're not as strong as they were. The German tanks are closing in, their guns roaring, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, the tide feels like it's finally turning. You take a breath, steadying yourself. You can feel your body shaking, but you push it down. You reload your rifle and fire again, watching as another Soviet soldier drops to the snow. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to focus with the constant barrage of fire. The snow, the blood, the death. But you do it. You fight on because it's the only thing you can do. The Soviets, despite their numbers, despite their tanks, are beginning to falter. You can see it in their faces, the shift in their movements, the hesitation in their fire. They know the Germans are here in force now, and their momentum is beginning to break. They're not giving up, but they're losing ground. And that's all you need. The battle is far from over. The reinforcements have arrived, but there's still much to fight for. The Soviets may retreat, but they'll be back. They always come back. But for now, you stand firm, rifle in hand and ready for whatever comes next. This fight isn't over, but you're still standing, and that's all that matters. The sound of the Soviet tanks grows fainter, replaced by the distant echo of German artillery, which fills the air with a heavy, persistent rumble. The battlefield feels like it's been torn apart and reshaped by war, each corner and crater marking the cost of survival. The snow continues to fall, but it no longer seems to hold the same weight it once did. It's a constant presence now, smothering everything in its path, just like the war itself. You raise your rifle one more time, the action familiar, automatic. The barrel of the gun is slick with ice and snow, but it's still a tool, a lifeline, a reminder that despite everything, you are still standing. The battle may be winding down, but the enemy is still there, still out there in the swirling chaos of the storm. You fire once, twice, your shots finding their marks in the shifting silhouettes of Soviet soldiers emerging from the smoke and haze. For every soldier that falls, it feels like another comes in their place. But it's all you can do. It's all you've been doing, fighting to stay alive. But as the sound of gunfire dies down, as the tank's engines grow quieter, you realize something. The Soviets have started to retreat. Slowly, methodically, they pull back, their tanks rolling over the snow, their infantry following suit. It's not an immediate retreat, not a full retreat, but a pause, a regrouping. And in this pause, you take a breath, finally allowing yourself to recognize that, perhaps for the first time since the battle began, you've survived. The German reinforcements are still moving through the battlefield, their tanks lining up, guns trained on the retreating enemy. The roar of their engines fills the air, but the once terrifying sound of the Soviet tanks is now a distant echo, fading into the snow. The battlefield has shifted, the momentum has turned, and for the first time in hours you realize that the Soviets are losing. They are pulling back. The fight is finally drawing to a close. But even in this moment of victory, there is no relief, no cheering, no celebrations. Just the hollow realization that survival is the only thing that matters now. The battle is over, but the scars of it remain. The battlefield is littered with the broken remnants of war. Dead soldiers, destroyed tanks, shattered dreams. The snow, once so pure and white, is now stained with the red of blood. The remnants of a conflict that has torn this land apart. You lower your rifle, your hands shaking from the cold, from exhaustion, from the weight of it all. Your body is numb, your muscles stiff from the strain of the battle, and yet you stand tall, unable to do anything but take it all in. The storm still rages around you, but you feel oddly disconnected from it now. The battle may be over, but the fight has taken its toll. The war has taken its toll. The German soldiers around you are beginning to move, their expressions grim, their faces reflecting the same weariness you feel. There are no cheers, no high fives. There's no victory dance, just the quiet acknowledgement that you've made it through another day. You glance at your comrades, their eyes hollow, their movements slow, but they are still here. They're still standing. And so are you. The Soviet retreat is complete for now, but you know this is just another pause in the endless march of war. The battlefield is littered with the bodies of fallen soldiers. Men you once fought beside, men who were once full of life and hope, now reduced to nothing more than bodies in the snow. The snow continues to fall, silently covering them, as if trying to erase the horror of what has happened. And then, as the last of the Soviet forces pull back, you realize something else. The war is far from over. This is just one battle, one chapter in a much larger story. The fight for survival will continue. The battle for victory will continue, but for now, in this moment, you've lived. You've survived. The cold still cuts through you. The weariness still weighs on your shoulders, but the weight of the battle begins to lift. For now at least, the Soviets have retreated. For now at least, you're still standing. The battlefield is silent once more, the sounds of war fading into the distance. You look around, taking in the devastation. The snow, now stained with blood, falls relentlessly. But there's a strange sense of peace that follows in its wake. The war has taken so much from you, from everyone who fought here. But the battle is over for now. And in that silence, in the calm that follows the storm, you know one thing: survival is the only victory you'll ever truly have. Now, as the night falls and the storm begins to subside, the silence speaks louder than anything else. It is the silence of the dead, of the fallen, of the soldiers who fought and died on this frozen hellscape. It is a silence you have earned. A silence that echoes louder than the roar of tanks, the crack of gunfire, and the explosions that shook the earth. The fight is over, for now.